Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Veterans Today Radio News Reports. I'm your host, Stu Webb, and it's March the 12th, 2015, and we're running a minute or two late here. Just a couple of small technical problems with the new network, and we're getting everything fine-tuned. And with that said, tonight I have three special guests. Gordon Duff, Jim Dean will be on the second hour, Dr. Preston James, because he likes to fire questions at Jim Dean, and bring Jim into more of an understanding with all of us laymen out here. And with that said, Gordon, it's hot out here right now, isn't it?
Well, hot as far as temperature.
Not weather. We've got beautiful weather in the 70s right now and have the past few days, but I'm talking about it seems to be a little warm for the bad guys right now.
Netanyahu may have to move out of whatever whorehouse he's in right now to an entirely different one. But Adelson's got a job for him as either a casino manager or a pool boy at a towel boy at a skivvy house, which fits his qualifications.
Maybe even male prostitute over there. For Antichrist. I call him Antichrist.
I think he's worn out at that by now. Chip, are you here now?
Gene, are you still with us here? Go back in with us, Gene. I'll send him a message.
I'm still with you guys.
Oh, okay, great.
Yep, I'm still with you guys.
Chip, are you following the story on MH17 from Russia Today? Chip, are you there?
No, I noticed a lot of activity on Veterans Today, though, and I noticed a lot of activity coming through Veterans Today, though.
Okay, let me play the which I've learned how to do now. I will play my short interview. There were two articles in Russia Today, and in order to do that, it's going to take me a few seconds to, with Skype, go into Tools. So you'll have about 20 seconds while I change over here. And I go to, excuse this, guys, audio settings. I shut my microphone off right.
I know that I've been getting off of the MH17 article on Veterans Today. I've been getting a lot of comments, people asking questions. So I was wondering what was up, if something was back in the news.
Circulate.
Okay, I'm going back in. Can you hear me, Chip?
Yes.
Okay, were you talking over the video or the audio, yes?
I could have been.
Yeah, so I'm going to go in again. I'm going to shut this down, and I'm going to start the audio again, okay?
Okay, play it loud. Turn your volume up on the audio. Okay.
It's playing at full volume right now. It's a direct hard line into your radio, so this should be blasting for you. Let me do it again. Let's see if you can do this. This is hard line. This isn't microphone.
Well, can you play it?
Investigation into the crash of Malaysian Airlines flight MH17 over Ukraine won't be known until July, but that's not stopping theories from circulating. New versions of what did or did not bring down the aircraft appear almost every week. One claim early on was that the Boeing was brought down by an Su-25 fighter jet, but its chief designer has now told German media that that was impossible because it can't fly high enough. But former Su-25 pilots disagree, adding that they've managed to reach altitudes of 14 kilometers. Gordon Duff is a US Marine combat veteran. He says that the absolute ceiling for the fighter jet is even higher than that.
The Su-25 was developed as an analog of the A-10 Thunderbolt, an American attack plane. The planes have almost identical performance, except that the Su-25 is faster and more powerful. The U.S. estimates the absolute ceiling of the Su-25 is 52,000 feet.
There's also the repeated claim that MH17 was hit from a Buk missile system. But a former Russian Air Force chief commander says that if that were the case, the Malaysian airliner would have broken into much smaller fragments in midair. Here's Gordon Duff again, who says it's impossible to fire a missile during the day without anyone noticing.
There is no reliable information supporting that it was a Buck missile fired by anyone. In the middle of the day, the contrail would have been seen for 50 miles. The contrail itself would have been photographed by thousands of people. It would have been on Instagram and Twitter. It would have been all over YouTube, and no one saw it. You can't fire a missile on a flat area in the middle of the day, leaving a smoke trail into the air and having everyone not see it.
For more arguments, you can go to RT.com. We've got the full story there. The first of the invasion into the crash of Malaysian Airlines.
Okay, I'm back on, yes?
Yes, we did hear it, Gordon.
Okay, so when we do those things, I've got about 20 seconds of feed here. The second time around, Chip, what happened is I got simply jammed. It wouldn't load at all, and I'm running a 100 meg line. I'm on direct fiber, so it's hard to, we do get fooled with. Now, Chip, you worked in this area. One of the things I used was an article from you on radar spoofing. If you could you explain how a BAE Systems radar spoofer could make, let's say, an F-15 American fighter bomber look like an Su-25? Can that be done, Chip?
It's all in data. I mean, it's easy to modify data. Everyone can see that today. You were just spoofed, right? Or you were just blocked. That you were blocked with a stream of data, and there's nothing different in radar systems anymore than data being received, being interpreted, and being put on the screen. So it would be simple for even a ground unit to stream data toward in the direction of a radar system to spoof that data in. It would also be just as easy for an aircraft airborne to spoof data into a radar system to make it something it isn't and make it somewhere that it isn't. So Chip, very simple to do.
You're saying that that someone, even from another ground unit, could send a signal into an antenna, pretend it's 5 aircraft 50 miles away at a certain speed, just because it sent that signal or that algorithm that represented that to the radar, and the radar would be seeing planes that didn't exist.
That's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay, we're just making that clear. And when I explained that to a few people, they had the other point we wanted to make here, when they mentioned that the designer of the aircraft, and this isn't the specific designer, but the individual is a Ukrainian living in Kiev named Barak that they spoke to, and we caught him in a lie. Pilots say they flew at 14,200 meters. The absolute ceiling of the aircraft, according to U.S. records, is 15,800 meters, which is 52,000 feet. Two things I point out, we have 2 articles on veterans today. One of them, and Chip, your work is in these articles, but a thing we'd point out, an Me-262 twin-engine jet built by the Germans in 1939 flew 40,000 feet. Moreover, the ceiling of a P-51 Mustang, and that's a propeller plane, is 44,000 feet. I've been in single-engine Cessnas at 30,000 feet before, and I'm wondering what these people are talking about here,
But Gordon, the Su-25 runs twin turbines. There's no way that it's...
But Chip, you should suggesting you look at this video and the articles. I republished your article from 2014 yesterday when this came up. And the reason we had an understandable story is I spent an hour talking to Russia Today, and after they got off the phone, they called pilots, and they learned they'd been lied to. So we've got a big slam dunk here, and why it's coming up now, why it's coming up today, that's another thing, why it's there. but the Russians are definitely pushing back, and they are not going to set still for what's going on, and they very well shouldn't. And at VT, and it's a collective project here between several of us, because I also had my air crash people and my Airline Pilots Association people look into this. So between us, we shut down, and this is our job at VT, absolutely shut down NATO on their attempt to play a game here. Before we go much further, Jim Dean's going to talk about the elections coming up in Israel and why they matter to people. And Israel has very hotly contested elections. Definitely Netanyahu has taken a huge hit, but we have some things legally to look at involving what's gone on recently, and some of the language we're going to be using. We're going to speak very carefully about this because it's a critical issue. What has happened with the Netanyahu visit, and with the in particular this Iran? This is a constitutional crisis. The Constitution.
The letter you're speaking of, Gordon, is 40 congressmen and senators sending a letter to Iran, correct?
47.
47.
Senators alone.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. The issue is just the Senate alone, 47 senators, and we've got a couple of responses we've had here. One of the things I've been reminding I'm going into Veterans Day, trying to pull up the articles on this, but well, let's go into a couple things. We've got one thing probably more serious than others, and where I need audience help. And if any of you, all of you out there, unless you've got you're driving or whatever, and you need the hand for something else, but raise your right hands here and swear you're going to help us in whatever way we can. About a week ago, it was announced that Senator Menendez, who's a Democrat from the state of New Jersey, is being busted, essentially, and I'll use that term, busted, for theoretically, and I've got someone here communicating with me on something. Oh, stepping away for a few. If you're stepping away for a few, probably don't type it in there because it comes in over the air. Okay, Jane. Yeah, just, I don't know. Text me on the phone on this. But Bob Menendez, and I will look at, I've got an article from Kevin Barrett, and Kevin had missed many of the areas here of the actual issue. Bob Menendez is being arrested for helping a Florida doctor named Solomon Melgen. Okay, and he supposedly helped this doctor who had overbilled Medicare and had cheated on some taxes. And Bob Menendez is probably going to end up resigning and maybe doing a little bit of jail time. The story itself has nothing to do with this. Now, once somebody left, who left here? Do I have Chip or do I have Stu?
You have me, Gordon.
Okay.
Gene had left for a few minutes.
Okay. The Solomon Melgen was a partner in a company called Sysint. Now, Sysint was a partnership here between a drug dealer from the 1980s, maybe one of the chief architects of the drug importing done with, and this is Hank Asher we're talking about. Hank Asher worked directly with Oliver North and General Secord, and organized the importation of cocaine using planes. Now, Hank Asher, in 1982, he suddenly went into the drug business in a major way. Before that, he dropped out of high school. He was a painting contractor, and then he went into the drug business. Went to Colombia. Now, with him in Colombia, running the drug business for Iran-Contra, was a member of the Bush family, Jeb Bush. Jeb Bush had gone to Venezuela to open a branch of Texas Commerce Bank. That's a Bush-owned Texas bank that was used for laundering drug money. And he was actually in Colombia most of that time. And while in Colombia, he had met a nice young lady from one of the cartel families, girl of Jewish Colombian heritage, married her. Married the daughter of one of the leaders of one of the cocaine cartels, who he's still married to, perhaps even happily, which is, and I'm glad for them. And then developed a friendship with Hank Asher. Now, Asher supposedly, after a couple of years of flying drugs into the U.S., got tired of it and decided to go into business selling database information, okay? As a computer programmer operating the most complex and comprehensive individual databases of personal information in the world at that time. And the company still exists. Someone's communicating with us here, I see. Okay, I'm attached to the chat, and I will go to the chat room and see who's here. I can't get into our chat room. Okay, I'm locked out of it. But someday I'll be able to get into it, and I'll be able to look at some of it. What I'm looking for out here is anyone who knows anything about the company SayCent, who has seen Hank Asher and Jeb Bush together. We know them to be close friends. Asher died in 2013. Asher is a high school dropout that is supposedly the greatest computer programmer in the history of the world, although he had never had a class in computers of any kind. Asher's company is credited with finding the 19 hijackers from 9/11. Asher's company is also credited with being used by the FBI and police departments around the United States finding pedophiles. The problem, of course, is that Asher's company, partnered with Melgen and Bush, is owned by pedophiles. Now, this company was bought by LexisNexis a couple of years ago for nearly $1 billion. Now, what we know about this is we know that this company and the databases were a combination of NSA and CIA databases that were hacked by Israel. And that we had a company show up selling what was the Matrix data search software used by police, software that supposedly is worth billions. There's no history of it ever having been developed. A company that showed up out of nowhere as a major database operator. Now, Asher is he's been dead for about 18 months, was very close to Dick Cheney. What is being hidden here in the Menendez thing, and this is, I'm asking for assistance. Anyone within law enforcement that's used Matrix software, who has dealt with SayCent, anyone in Florida state government that has worked with any of the backstage maneuvering to bring this company to the forefront in the 80s and 90s. Anyone that has been involved in the communities in Naples, West Palm Beach, and Boca Raton. that knows the drug business there, and other than Chip and I, who have knowledge of Asher and Bush running narcotics together. We believe that the move against Menendez is a move against Jeb Bush, and we had more than a couple of moves. This is one of the things that's probably difficult to explain to folks, and excuse me if I have a hard time doing it. That is a hell of a long day today. But we look at information, real world information that you don't ever get. Whatever you read in the paper is a fantasy. Here's a for instance, and I will go on and while you're on with use the website. And I sometimes use the website from memory because I'll tell you, I get as tired as absolutely any of you out there do. A long day driving around dealing with stuff, and kids, grandchildren, the Syrian government all day, their stuff. And there are limits to what, any one person can do. And I'm as limited as any of you, frankly. Let's get down to this here. We've got my MH17 articles. We've got articles on let's go into investigations. Okay, we're going to let that go for a minute because I can. We're posting so much news, and things are happening so fast here. And this is what Stu was talking about. We are absolutely loading up. But it's vital I get as much as possible from any of you out there, any of you that know things. And I know we have some movers and shakers out here. Now we had I have a Putin questionnaire, and I believe I can go into the top 10 petition. Okay, we're running a petition here to file charges against 47 senators. That is not a joke. And I'll read the President Putin demand letter that we have put out this week, and I'll explain some of why I'm doing this. And it's a take on the for those of you who are literate here on We Accuse. Demand President Putin release the following documents vital to world peace. President Putin, political divides within the United States now clearly threaten world peace. Pro-Israeli factions within the U.S. are working not only to sabotage a nuclear settlement with Iran, but go much further. Recent lapses in judgment and decorum by General Breedlove, and this guy's a lunatic, by the way, of NATO, covert U.S. aid to ISIL, like you didn't think we were arming these people, by certain U.S. factions in support of terrorist factions in Libya and across Africa have raised the stakes. We at Veterans Today, listen carefully. This is where I'm writing to someone other than the readers, okay? This is a game here, an insider's game. Some of you will pick this up. Others won't. It's a peek behind the curtain you won't get. We at Veterans Today, in consultation with staff members and unlisted associates, some former Soviet and Russian intelligence officials known to you, including one KGB chief, by the way, are aware that the intelligence services of the Russian Federation have files in their possession, some kept for many years, that should now be made available. As per our initial request, we asked the following documents we know to be in Russian keeping. And, I would say there's this joke about people, being beyond their expiration date. Well, secrets can be beyond their expiration date as well. And we're asking Russia, since the Israelis and Russians are at each other's throats even more than the Israelis and the Americans are. And if you don't know that, it's there, and it can all be fixed. If you're Jewish and worried or whatever, Sane people, and there aren't many of them, can take care of this. But we have to get rid of the crazy people first. Here's what I'm asking for, and I'll read this out. The language, how I have worded these things, is not meant for any of you to see. But people in the U.S. and the intelligence services of Russia know exactly what I'm asking for. This is insider stuff here. When we start the list now, tape recordings and transcripts of John McCain's 32 propaganda broadcasts made while a prisoner of war, including his claims that the U.S. was using germ warfare against North Vietnam. Next. The text of John McCain's debriefing by the KGB in Hanoi, including full order of battle information that led to the redeployment of air defenses and a much higher success rate shooting down American aircraft. The next one's a big deal. This one's a big secret here. Full information on Netanyahu's role in running Jonathan Pollard as a Soviet agent. Stu, what am I saying there?
You're saying that the secrets were passed to the Soviet Union. This was the KGB's mob. These were the Khazarian crime syndicate. And I'm aware that Leonard Millman.
No.
We won't go there.
We're not going to go there or several other places.
Okay, but yeah, it was the Russian mob, and they moved the secrets for Israel into Russia, and they set us back, didn't they?
No. It's
okay.
The damage was worse. 1,100 CIA assets were killed because the NOC list, non-official cover list, was here. We're identifying the Israeli prime minister as having been a Russian agent spying on the United States.
Okay, I can handle that and believe that.
Okay, the point being is that is a crime that he can be prosecuted for. And we know there's evidence of it. It's a crime he can be arrested for and prosecuted in the U.S. Next, full information on Netanyahu's role as a Soviet agent in the theft of American cryptographic units from the UNTSO, that's a Treaty Surveillance Organization, in 1990, the nature of the data, NATO military secrets, U.S. State Department correspondence, and U.S. naval codes that Netanyahu personally passed to Moscow as a Russian spy. We are clearly stating and asking for records, and then the Russians aren't good about but if they're going to give somebody up, they should give him up, because this is, somebody has turned on him. No reason for them to protect him anymore. We want their records of Netanyahu, not only, and we have two editors at Veterans Today that know Netanyahu personally, and one of them, for Army intelligence, investigated Netanyahu as a Russian spy. He was in 1990, Netanyahu was under investigation as a Russian spy. And we have, I can prove it to anybody. Next question. Full information on Mitt Romney's meetings with Russian intelligence in Havana during his visit there, illegal visit there, in 1999, and we have photos of him there, and I have a transcript, and we played a little bit of an audio recording of an FBI briefing where this was discussed. We did this last time. Next, recordings and transcripts of Romney's meetings with Raul Castro and the promises that Romney made. Next, surveillance video of John McCain and Joseph Lieberman taken in Zurich, the Russians have this, showing them entering banking facilities after a trip to Kabul and meetings with drug lords of the Northern Alliance. Next, biggest one. Satellite imagery showing the movement of highly enriched nuclear material in and around New York City prior to the events of September 11th, 2001. Next, Files showing the role of Israeli involvement in nuclear proliferation, including but not limited to the sale of nuclear weapons to Saudi Arabia. And last, I think this is last. Let me roll that down there. No, it's not. Next to last. Files showing deposits in Cayman banks managed by Bain on behalf of over 300 members of Congress of the United States. And that's the list of their payoffs. Next. Evidence showing the transfer of nuclear material from Israel to North Korea. These are only a small percentage of the materials you have available, materials that quite frankly will not be of value if world events continue their current levels of deterioration. And whether we get this or not, we know these documents exist. We know the Russians have these and much more. And we want these because we believe it is important to the security of the United States that these people be taken down. We received information 72 hours ago that Justice Scalia had contacted Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, and had told McConnell that Scalia said, and this is the quote, this was in an email, "I have 5 Supreme Court justices in my pocket, and we'll stand by you." And we're talking about the Logan Act here. Now, did we talk about the Logan Act last time, Stu?
No, we did not. Why don't you explain the Logan Act to him?
Let me explain about the Constitution here and what it allows. In 1799, the French had a revolution. In 1799, the French government didn't get along with George Washington, and the Secretary of State at the time was Thomas Jefferson. So they wrote a letter to the American Congress, and Jefferson reminded them that the Constitution, and this is what the Constitution utterly and absolutely forbids any member of Congress from welcoming or meeting or inviting a foreign dignitary or leader of any kind. That foreign dignitaries and leaders, and this is in the Constitution, may only be met with by the President of the United States. And the Constitution, and the reason, they give a reason, because complex negotiations will not allow foreign leaders to deal with the other branches of the U.S. government, separation of powers. No member of Congress can meet a foreign leader. Beebe's visit to the U.S., to Congress, directly taking his case to them, the people that invited him, and frankly, the people who went, who met with him, are felons. This is under the Logan Act, and the Logan Act is, I think I can read the Logan Act to you here. This is any citizen of the United States, wherever he may be, who, without authority of the United States, and that comes only through the president, directly or indirectly commences or carries on any correspondence or intercourse, which, they with any foreign government or any officer or agent thereof, with intent, now there's the key part, to influence the measures or conduct of any foreign government or of any officer or agent thereof in relation to disputes or controversies within the United States, or to defeat the measures of the United States, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 3 years or both. Now, that's the Logan Act.
Well, that would take care of all the Congress and Senator that appeared up there, wouldn't it? With Bibi Netanyahu?
Yes. The ones who signed the letter and the Democrats and Republicans who showed up. It's an act of rebellion. Now, let me, this is the oath of office for the U.S. Senate. I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to same. I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge my duties of this office for which I am about to enter, so help me God. I've been subjected to this one myself as, well, this is VT, have an awful lot of us have, a couple of times for me here. Toward this end, the violation of the oath of office, what you can't do. And this is the interesting point with Netanyahu, my issues with him. When he came here, he met with people and helped plan that crazy letter that went to Iran. That crazy letter that went to Iran. Now, to violate the Logan Act in that letter, you have to be an American citizen. And a member of Congress, by the way, has no more standing than anyone out there in foreign policy. A congressman has no standing whatsoever. And I will tell you that I meet with foreign leaders. I do this. You can go on YouTube and you'll see photos, and you will see me, but with the president of Nigeria, for instance, or others, and I have meetings with people, and I will tell you this: the State Department monitors what I do, what I say. I am not allowed to, in any way, say anything to someone representing any faction within the United States, and not just Syria or countries that we have difficulty with. But you just can't do it. I can advise people on schools. I can talk to people about defeating Boko Haram. But what I can't do is I can't do anything when you leave the country or you're dealing with foreign leaders. You cannot do anything to undermine the policies of the United States government. Now, when asked, I will tell people what's going on. I'll do that. And you can see me doing that in Syria.
And you did it in Syria, and the video is on Veterans Today Radio and Veterans Today TV right at the top, Gordon.
With the roles, and I get probably more of the space time than some others do because I'm more entertaining, maybe. But it's a critical issue. Now, the problem we have with Netanyahu is when he came to the U.S., he met with people and aided and abetted them in writing the letter to Syria. Now, the people the 47 signatories to that letter are felons. They are self-admitted felons by their own signature. Their own signature is a confession, and they may be arrested. Is a confession, and they may be arrested and detained at any time legally in the United States, and any citizen has the power to do this. Now, I'm not going to tell you you're not going to get shot doing it, but I'm telling you that as a citizen you have legal standing to do it. Yes. And we have attorneys out here. They can, we have a lot of them listening. They can explain this. And if you're law enforcement people, any of you can do this. We don't need a grand jury. The signature on the letter, but the next step is this. Netanyahu entered the United States without going to the president or secretary of state. He entered this country as a private citizen. He has no diplomatic immunity in the United States. I will tell you that he is also, Prime Minister Netanyahu is officially persona non grata in the United States right now. He's on the no-fly list. He cannot enter the United States, and he's running for, for prime minister again. He can't come here. What he had done, and I see another little blurb down here on Skype, and excuse me for doing this. It's like somebody that you're having sex and they they want to change the TV channel. Not that things like that. And it says here, and this is from a Washington lobbyist, Bibi is desperate and panicking, down in all the polls, partially due to his U.S. folly, and Bibi is toast. And that's from a lobbyist here. But Netanyahu is guilty of conspiracy to violate the Logan Act. You do not have to be a citizen of the United States to be a conspirator. In this case, conspirator before the fact. In addition, I think one could possibly make the same case, make the case for Sheldon Adelson. Anyone that has offered financial recompense or support. And if we can make a case, and this I would ask for a grand jury investigation, if the 5 extremist members of the Supreme Court are in the pocket of Mr. Scalia, as we are told he has promised, if that communication is true, and I cannot be certain that it is, because that's why we have judges and juries. But I think we need to name a special prosecutor. I think the president is obligated to name an independent special prosecutor because of the constitutional crisis, and that we need to investigate 5 members of the Supreme Court who should be immediately recused. 47 members of the Senate should be immediately recused, and that's a constitutional crisis. I didn't want this to happen. I don't want to see people arrested. The president is obligated to, as chief law enforcement officer in the United States, to have them arrested. This is an Obama problem, by the way. When people commit a crime, you can't not do this. It's insurrection. By meeting with a foreign leader and trying to subvert American foreign policy in direct violation of their oath of office, the Constitution, and U.S. criminal code, all of those things. In doing so, it's like this. We bring this up all the time. People that are sitting in jail for selling crack somewhere, when people steal $1 billion and are running up and down the streets. Savings and loan crisis. So Stu, don't get into it right now, Stu. Okay, because Stu can talk about it for 2 days here and name people, till the cows come home. Cows never really come home. This is a crisis. It's as serious a crisis as we had in 1861 with the election of Lincoln. Here is the standing of minimally the people who wrote the letter to Tehran. They have, in doing so, as in violating their oath of office, they have given up their citizenship in the United States and are now in rebellion. 47 members of the Senate are right now legally no longer citizens. John McCain and others, Mitch McConnell, are not citizens of the United States. Now, my smart aleck comment would be, you don't like it here, go somewhere else, go live in Israel, and of course the Palestinians will blow up my house for that, so I'm taking that one back. But the literal case, they're felons, they have confessed. signing a letter in clear violation of U.S. law is a confession. Same as saying, I had intent, and that it's one thing doing something to demonstrate intent, but then signing a statement admitting it is a confession. It's a criminal confession. It is, it's, and considering almost all of them are lawyers, by the way, they have waived, and this is the nice thing about our new Supreme Court, since we don't have a lot of rights here anymore. We've softened the Constitution up, but they have incriminated themselves voluntarily. But this is, it's at the stage of rebellion. It's not so much an idea of defending Obama and Obamacare, and the fact, I'm making money hand over fist in the stock markets, and we want to see the Iranians, do whatever. Frankly, I could care about the Iranians, and the Israelis are responsible for their own stuff. And yes, since an awful lot of Americans are becoming wise to what's been going on, and the amount of support we're getting here. It used to be that Veterans Today was standing by itself saying that Israel's a threat to the United States. Now the New York Times is saying it. It's almost an embarrassment to us because we're now mainstream media. I never wanted to be mainstream media, but we're pretty much there. This is that kind of crisis. It's that serious. These people are crazy. Really bad judgment, really stupid. Rand Paul, really stupid. We can't afford to have really stupid people running the country. And how do and who's going to replace them? This liberal conservative thing or whatever. We're obviously going to have to wipe the slate, get together as a country, and we already have rules. These guys broke the rules. Now, Obama is sitting on the right side of the rules here. He's got 2 years left to serve, and he's not doing any harm. Economically, we're doing as well as we can for a country loaded with drugs that shipped all of its jobs overseas and spends the better part of $1 trillion a year on, we'll say, a bloated military. A country, and we don't even begin to describe the Federal Reserve and the bank, all of the things that are talked about here. And then we'll have Preston James and Jim Dean talk about the Khazarian Mafia. And I think yes, there is such a thing. The issue for all of you out there, and it's what you're forced to do, we're in a lot of trouble right now. This is a very, very serious problem. We can't have members of Congress challenge the Constitution like this. It has nothing to do with Obama, none of this. It has nothing to do with the Iranians, and I get as difficult with the Iranians as anyone does. I don't worship the Iranians by any means. I will write for Press TV and appear on their TV and radio networks periodically, and now things we have any time here. I've got about 2 minutes. I want to break one story here. This is not confirmed.
Gordon, you got as much time as you want because we can run 3 hours if we want.
Oh God, I forget. We own the network.
We own the network.
Oh my God, I did that with Mike Harris the other day. Yeah. We own the damn network.
So I don't think Jim Dean will have a problem with giving you another half an hour, or Dr. Preston James. So why don't you go with it?
Here's a quality rumor. Folks deserve this kind of stuff anyway, and it's why you come here. There is a military organization in Iran called the Al-Quds Brigade. Al-Quds is the Arabic name for the city of Jerusalem, and the name is one of historical importance. Okay, there is word drifting around here, and since I was not officially included in this secret, if I let it go and I didn't hack anything or whatever, I can leak this. That the U.S. has agreed to allow Iran to spearhead the liberation of the city of Mosul. And that General Suleiman, who is an Iranian commander of the Al-Quds Brigade, who is probably the greatest military commander in the world today, is General Suleiman in Iran, whatever reason. People there love him. People are all in the Islamic world. He's a smart guy fighting on the side of the U.S. right now. He's really good. Okay. And our people, I'll tell you, respect him. This guy's great. And people are afraid of the Israelis, the bad Israelis, and you got to draw this line here. Good, you can't buy in on any of this good and bad stuff. More is being asked of us, but this is a serious guy. If you've ever heard of me, if we have a deal to have this guy take an invasion that we announced in advance for the spring, and that means take Mosul in an invasion that we've announced in advance for the spring, and that means the preparations are going on right now. The deal we have with Iran, there's a reason why people would be interfering with the nuclear deal. See, the nuclear deal is kind of a red herring. They aren't developing bombs. It doesn't do any good. If they had them, it's all a joke. If you thought it was a joke, you understood. But this other thing, ISIS has developed a life of its own. They set up a pirate club of some kind. It's like you're the kid. You've got the clubhouse, and all of a sudden you're the fun kid in town. It's where you can be a Muslim and have sex with women at will. Anything you can catch. Drink all the whiskey you want. They sure as hell do that. Take drugs continually, and they sure as hell do that. And the supply of drugs in the Middle East, I can tell you, the Middle East is drowning in both whiskey and drugs. If you didn't know that, it's why the Emirates, for instance, the UAE, is so strongly anti-drug, because there are lots of drugs out there. I mean, getting a pound of hashish or a cup of heroin you could do it at the corner store. And we have people we've been affiliated with. We find that we've de-affiliated ourselves with because we have found them to be in that business. Too many people in the Middle East, too many people who have worked for the CIA, the DEA, who've worked for military contracting firms, have gotten sucked into the drug business. Journalists, academics have gotten sucked into the drug business there. And there is no one enforcing anything. So it's a big business there. Human trafficking and narcotics through Lebanon, Syria, Turkey, Iraq, Kuwait, Jordan, and Israel. It's a big business, and it's wide open Wild West. So there are areas that, where people will cut your hands off, or like Singapore, and there's a reason, because it's far more wide open. I lived in East Grand Rapids, and we had his parents in the early 1990s. We were called into the high school and warned that we had an epidemic, and East Grand Rapids, Michigan is, I think it's the 5th wealthiest community in the United States. And we were warned that we had an epidemic of heroin sales in the high school and the junior high school. And it's that pervasive. And of course, that's an easy thing to do when you live in a country where the CIA, where your government, where the Bush family, and absolutely generations of dealing drugs. Now we're past the top of the hour. Is Jim Dean hooked up yet?
No, he is not. I just talked to him a moment ago and told him you were taking some more time, but I'll bring him in right now. Gordon.
Bring him in, because and it's not that much fun, the Israeli election, and I don't. sometimes I feel I wish I had Rush Limbaugh as producers. I don't need a 8-year-old kid sitting under my desk here, which makes me different than a lot of people. Although I don't even have a cat down there now. I do have a pit bull on the sofa behind my desk, though. Booters the dog is back there, just stretched out next to my shoes. So I do have a pit bull, but now we've gotten to be just too mainstream now. But Jim, are you there?
I am here.
Uh,
I'm somewhere.
Now I've got Jim on a research
Over
project
the
here.
rainbow.
Yeah, we're doing karaoke, the Hank Asher thing, and I'm a tired kid today. We've got a couple of things we wanted to. I got plugs. A plug here for VT's Custom Shop. We have a batch of AR-based weapons for sale in 223 to 308, and we have a wealth of 308s. Very high-end, wonderful things that we're making available. So go into Veterans Today and check custom weapons. I'm also telling you that Veterans Today has signed a partnership with Brighton College, and that's an online school out of Arizona. And part of the rationale is that we have so many personnel teaching there that we're working directly with them. I'm going to be endorsing Brighton College. My wife teaches there, nursing, history, medical billing, human anatomy, human diseases. There's a gunsmithing school, business. It's a wide offering. We'll be putting up, the deal we're going to have is we're going to be offering lower tuition for VT people, which we do with others, and special programs. This is a degree, fully certified organization. This is Brighton, and of course it won't track down, but brightoncollege.edu is the website, and we'll be attaching this to Veterans Today. Our backing for this is because it meets the standards of mine. I've worked in education for some time. I'm not a strong believer in online education, but when done properly, and it's fairly intense. It's designed around military veterans and military spouses. The classes are immersive. It's a full academic experience. It develops quality core competencies. And my concern on a personal basis is I've got a lot of you guys that have come back, and some of you who've been in the military for 6, 8, 10, 12 years have gotten out with some advanced skills, but they're not employable. But you have the ability to learn very well and are being pushed into paralegal, law enforcement, or medical areas. And I will say Brighton will treat you well, and they will check out to do that. But what I do want is I don't want people to get behind the 8 ball at $8 and $9 an hour jobs. Feel crushed. You've got the ability here. We hope the government will help most of you with either GI Bill or VA vocational rehabilitation funding. Those of you who don't fall into that category, we will do what we can to see to it that you can afford to go to school. We will do what we can, but I want people to be able to make $20 an hour or $30 an hour or $40 an hour. It's my generation that sat on our asses when these jobs were shipped overseas and left many of you there without the opportunities that some of us still have. I'm somebody that, is a banker, made cash and live okay. Not everybody does. But we want to undo, this is all I can do to undo some of the damage we've done, this and what I can do to fight what's going on. But in the interim, I've got to keep as many veterans, families together, alive, going to school, and and I've had to do that, and investing in
Can I
yourself.
break in here just a second before you
Sure.
pull Jim and the other guys on? You have a couple questions in the chat room. One
Sure.
of them carries a pretty common thread.
Okay, sure.
They're wanting to know who have balls enough to do the arrests. Would it be the military? Who would have the authority to do this?
Well, right now we have a key issue. Is there's a constitutional crisis because the president is being gutless. This is what Lincoln went through. This is and Preston James can talk about this quite authoritatively and should during the next hour. Lincoln didn't have to start a war that killed 500,000 people. Of course, no one knew that was going to happen, or that Robert E. Lee was better than all of our generals, or, of course, that the Civil War, and it had aspects that were not tied. Simply, there were other issues of exploitation of the South, of states' rights, which were quite genuine. But on the basis of constitutional crisis alone, Lincoln was a very brave man and could have easily just stood by like Obama is doing and let the country is breaking up right now. This is happening. You may not know it's happening, but in the last week, the United States, we are no longer one nation. Not when Congress has flaunted their authority in the face of the Constitution, when they have individually tried to negotiate with both Israel and Iran around constitutional precepts and federal law, criminal law. These are admitted criminals. As far as arresting them, that authority, and this is the point we have. That authority rests with every citizen. Any citizen here can arrest anyone that is, and we have crossed that. We're there now. We're where you could legally do this. You will be shot down in the process. That's this kind of country. Where the dialogue has to start is with you out here who understand this, and those of you out here who are judges, attorneys, and police, that we have to, from the ground up, take this country back. And I'm not saying because it's to support President Obama. It's way more important than anything to do with President Obama. I don't even love the Constitution. The Constitution's a flawed document. This is not one of the areas where it's flawed. And we have our back against the wall in a way we never have had before. It doesn't have to be whether you hate the Jews or love the Jews or it has nothing to do with any of this. We're at the edge of a rebellion. This is a civil war. We have people who think they're above the law. And you hear the Fox News crap about Obama's passing this or doing that. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. This is it. It's this. And these people, we have people sitting in the Senate and House of Representatives who no longer legally hold citizenship in the United States, and they believe they are ruling this country. They're not governing, they're ruling. This is tyranny. This is why we had, that unpleasant revolution against the British. This is tyranny. These people are operating outside of the law. They're operating outside of the Constitution. They are spending our money. They believe they're commanding our troops. They believe they're pulling it right out of their asses here. They're negotiating with countries. They believe they're starting wars on their own. And they're doing this to damage all of us, and they're criminals. They are officially criminals.
Okay, here's the second one for you. Do you have any idea what Papa thinks of his son Rand?
In 2005, an intelligence official of the U.S., a high intelligence official, longtime family friend. I mean, everybody in the stupid spy business knows everybody, as Chip can tell you. Had invited Carol and I to go to Washington, and well, we can. I'll introduce you to everyone in the Senate, and what we want you to do is we want you to come in and work for Ron Paul, because Ron Paul needs to have let's say, more reach into the military and intelligence community, which you could do as chief of staff for him. And I think they got someone else to do this instead. I have no interest in living around there. I respect many of the things Ron Paul has said, and there has been the signs of a clear streak of decency in him. His sons, I don't know what to think about this guy. He's a con man. If, as a parent, okay, and I've got, got kids, got a lot of kids. Had a problem with kids before, daughter doesn't finish a class, or, kids get mad at you because, your parents are disappointment, and heaven forbid, any of us can be. And if you've got kids, if you didn't think you were a disappointment to people, ask your kids, they'll let you know, Rand Paul is a disappointment as a human. He is a spineless sycophant. It appears to be a sociopath to me. He's delusional. I don't think I'd like to think Americans would never take him seriously. As for his dad, as a parent, it's our job to love our kids no matter what. Politically supporting a kid who is the diametric opposite of everything his father has stood for, that's something else. And he has obviously, Ron Paul has failed as a parent in ways that, I don't know anybody else who's done that bad a job, and there are a lot of things that can make kids go bad. I mean, maybe he's just got, maybe Rand Paul's got a brain tumor, or maybe he was sexually molested by some preacher somewhere, or maybe he got a hold of some bad drugs when he was at school learning whatever the hell it is that he thinks he knows how to do. But he's a lunatic. Is he dangerous? He may not be likable enough to be dangerous. I don't think people necessarily believe him. That's one of the great things about Palin. She's such a sack of shit that no one takes her seriously. I'm hoping Rand Paul stays there. The point would be that, and this is what we're all watching, is we look at him and the crazy things where he'll say something sensible and then he'll unsay it. We know him to be a stooge of the Khazarian mafia, owned and operated. This is the problem with these people. They hate the United States. They hate this country. John McCain hates the United States. Mitch McConnell, Boner, Rand Paul hate the United States. They live in a country of, it's not even the Confederacy. Jim Dean is an expert on the Confederacy. He can explain, the people who fought for the Confederacy, and, the Southern Poverty Law Center, by the way, which is an outfit of degenerates and conmen, try to create sock puppet white supremacist groups. And there are still people around there who worry about issues of race and things like, and I'd like to think that most of us, we've had years to get past this, and it's not for me to judge what everyone does. One of the things Jim Dean had brought up earlier today is we have kids that are being thrown out of a school in Oklahoma because they were singing racist songs, and they're being expelled from school, as opposed to someone telling them that you can't do that, and then maybe making them, let's say, clean sidewalks for a couple of hours, which is, that's, fine. Because we have people running around killing each other that don't get that kind of punishment. Uh, there's a serious lack of common sense here. There's a lack of consensus in the country. Going back, Chip, to where I have to, constitutional crisis, and it's gone down to it's past Obama. Obama is not showing the courage of Lincoln. He has to have these people arrested. He has to do it. And in doing so, were I the president, I would go on television and I would, in the most solemn way, it's with the deepest imaginable regret that I have to order the arrest of those members of Congress that signed the Iraq letter and those people who were involved in a fundamental way of treating with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu in violation of U.S. law, and that they are being recognized as being in rebellion against the United States, in violation of their oath, in violation, and when you're in violation of the constitutional oath, remember that's the same oath the Senate takes that you take when you become a citizen of the United States. You violate that oath, you are renouncing your citizenship. And it's simple as that. They have renounced their citizenship. Do I want to see this happen? Absolutely not. It's a nightmare. It'll tear this country apart. Is there any way of getting around it? There is not. If Obama fails to act, we're all screwed. You know, stripped of, they have to be taken process, stripped of their jobs. They have to be taken in, arrested, processed, stripped of their jobs. There have to be people appointed by the governors of these states to the positions within the Senate. I think we have an opportunity to erase all of the crazy rules in Congress, and perhaps to erase a lot of the executive rules as well. Come back into compliance with the Constitution. I think the best legal scholars in the United States, and they exist, need to come to a consensus on how to control this crisis, and that is to rein in the Supreme Court, to eliminate things like Citizens United, which is utterly illegal. This issue is a criminal justice issue. We cannot enforce laws in the United States. We can't arrest speeders. We can't give out parking tickets if we can't arrest members of the government who have committed felonies. We can't publicly allow this many people who are rich and powerful to violate U.S. law. And in this case, they are threatening the safety and rights of every American. These guys, in doing this and violating the Constitution, I can say this enough, it has nothing to do with Obama or Democrats or Republicans or any theory. In doing this, they have struck down the United States of America. They have attacked this country. They are in rebellion. I would have told them, whether I like them or don't like them or whatever, I would have said, don't do this. It's crazy. Don't do it. It's going to rip the country apart. They're lunatics. And on that, Jim, I'm going to let you go.
Gordon Duff, I want to thank you for being on, and I just want to make a quick announcement. This is the Veterans Today Radio News Reports, and I am your host, Stu Webb, and we're running an extra half an hour tonight. So, Jim Dean, Gordon, thank you for being on. Jim Dean, you're there, and Dr. Preston James, you're on with me because you want to throw some questions, I know, at Jim Dean. So, with that said, Jim, how are you this evening?
Good.
Tell us your latest.
I was going to say I have a question for Jim, and the only reason I'm asking it because there really is nowhere else we can get this information. But Jim, has there been any significant progress with this Minsk agreement? Is it holding? Is there a chance for real peace in the Ukraine?
there's a slim chance. There's peace now in that the people in the major areas, you've got the big guns out, so people aren't living under the terror of these over 100 millimeter guns, and these rad rocket salvos just can come blowing into town, into a city, anywhere where you are. So that's what they're calling the success for the ceasefire. But what's continuing to go on is Kiev is trying to gain the initiative after they're trying to steal victory from the defeat by throwing every roadblock they can into the pursuing. They're not agreeing with setting up some of the discussion groups they're supposed to be doing. They're mentioning that the elections are going to be held under Ukrainian rules. They make some announcements like that that get publications in the Western media, but then nothing else happens, and they don't do anything else. And that part of it doesn't get reported in Western media. But we have today, what they've decided now is rather than shelling with big guns, they didn't require removal of guns under 100 millimeters. So you still got your 80 millimeter mortars. And so they're using those to do spoiling attacks and keep tensions going. And there's no penalties. See, they didn't, of course, they never would have agreed to any kind of penalties on this. And of course, the West could have had somebody in there that, if we see a pattern of deception here, a pattern of breaking these, you're going to lose your financing. That was the only way to put any kind of strings on Kiev of following through with this stuff. And when those strings weren't put on, it shows you that the U.S. and particularly, and the EU did a bad job by giving Kiev the maneuvering room to mess this thing up. So they have a lower scale war going on, which is better than the other one because repairs are being made. They are trying to repair some of the infrastructure and get heating back, but it's still going to be difficult to get businesses started, get people back to work. And that's Kiev's job. We just don't want them to get back into a normal life. We want them to continue suffering, which in a way is how the rest of the Ukraine is. And then, of course, they're going to blame the suffering of the rest of the Ukraine. They want to blame all on the Southeast and the Russians. But here's the thing that really blew my mind. Every couple of days, they throw something out as some kind of initiative. And this is what you call in PR is when you've got the press people on your side and they're always going to publicize your statements. Would you believe they're talking about building a wall around Southeast Ukraine? Like the Berlin Wall.
Or the wall in Israel?
Yeah. And of course, and they say, like, where are you going to get the money for this? You have a bankrupt, and this is how lunatic the leadership is there. I mean, you have the bottom of the barrel. They're absolutely broke, and yet they're talking about spending money. They're out shopping for weapons. They're saying, well, if the U.S. won't sell them to us and Germany won't sell us any, we'll buy weapons from somewhere else. There weren't restrictions put on this IMF loan to hold their weapons things down. They left that open for them because so now you not only have the West going in hock loaning them all these billions of dollars, but they're allowing them to spend this money on weapons, which is just going to destroy more of the country, drag the war out longer, which is going to hurt the economy more, which is going to make the chances of getting it turned around and the loans paid off even harder. And yet the people that loaned the money didn't even have sense to basically put a veto act in there that if we see you conspiring to say you want peace and then you're pushing for a military solution, we're going to cancel all the funding. So in a way, the Kiev guys are playing and say, look, we got you guys over a barrel because if you were to cancel our funding, we just go belly up. And now you have to face your banking collapse of all this money. This is never going to be repaid. Of course, it's not going to be repaid anyway. So they feel they can get away with that much. And then for some reason, the EU, we know why the US is doing it, because they say we don't care about the money. It's peanuts compared to whatever their reason is for trying to get this Russian hysteria thing going. But for the EU, who really stood up and they didn't want to have the weapons go in, they did a good job. They had to split with the US on that. Obama had to back off and made the neocons heavy. He's not going to ship any. That was kind of a cooling down. So, but now you see, you don't know whether Kiev is doing some of that now in terms of spite, that you didn't give us the weapons that we want, so now we're going to make trouble and try to renege on the ceasefire. The good news is we have less reports of Russian armored divisions magically crossing over the border where they're not seen by the monitors at the border stations. That has cooled off.
But nobody believed it anyway.
No, well, actually, Victoria tells me that a lot of the rural people in Ukraine, when told that the southeast Ukraine has been invaded and taken over by the Russians and teamed up with speaking traders that were living in Ukraine, most of them believe that. Because they're like people we have here in this country, that if it's in the newspaper and the government says it in an official statement, it's impossible. The government couldn't dare lie like that, because people would point it out and they would look terrible.
Jim, you heard Gordon Duff talk about the constitutional crisis, and he compared that to some of the same situation that President Lincoln was involved in. Now, you're also not only an expert on logistics in the media, you're an expert on the logistics of the Civil War and the political conflicts. Can you tie all it in and bring us up to speed on that?
Well, the Lincoln, he was like political leaders we have today. And depending on what group of people he was talking to, he would be for one thing, and for something on another group, he would be for something else. And the classic on that is when he was campaigning. I think it was Indiana, where he's from. When he was in the northern part of the state, he gave speeches being against slavery. But when he campaigned in the southern part of the state, he gave speeches, said he wouldn't interfere with it. And that was back in the days when you didn't have instant communication. And that's how wild and woolly it was. They would give they would take two different sides on an issue depending on the two different south and north side of the state. So Lincoln was quite a Weasley type person. And the little gem story I like to tell, because you had, Democrats were the opposition during the Civil War, because they never wanted to go to war. They wanted to have a negotiated settlement, some type of compromise, like the United States had always done. You had secession come up during the War of 1812. New England was preparing to secede. They had a conference in Boston. They were going to break away and join Canada, something that they don't teach kids about very much. South Carolina at one point was going to secede. So you had these various aspects of this that just got kind of erased until you get to graduate level history. They don't even really teach a lot of this stuff in college. But he was negotiating corresponding by mail with some people and some Democratic officials in New England were about the suspension of habeas corpus, and they wanted to have a meeting with this, and they were showing their objections to it. And of course, he responded, "Well, yeah, I'll be happy to have a meeting with you." He says, "Yeah, I'll just come on down to Washington, and we'll have this meeting." And of course, these guys weren't about to leave their states, because they felt that once they got to Washington, he would have them arrested. under the no habeas corpus. And I said, I don't think, I think you're plotting, and you could just throw them in jail. So they didn't want to go. So what they did is they submitted questions they wanted to ask him by letter, and he answered them by letter. And just one short when they asked him about, and he answered them by letter. And just one short when they asked him about, how could he justify arresting people without trial and with no verifiable proof for court hearing or anything that they had been involved in any treason. And he actually said that that sometimes the most dangerous enemy to the state is not the person that comes right out and says something that makes himself visible, but it's the person that's quiet and lays back and says he's not quite sure which way, and he doesn't openly cast his way one way or the other. And he said, so under habeas corpus, what I can do is if I see people that have not proclaimed that they're for all my policies, then I can deem them the man who's silent can be as big an enemy and a threat to the country than those who's outspoken. So it was a really scary type of thing where he was saying, you all act like dancing seals and come to the rallies and cheer and whatever, and all of you that don't, which includes anyone that's in the opposition, you are all subject to summary arrest at my whim at any time. It was really a shocking thing to see that a sitting president actually put that in writing. And you have this today with the attitude with the Jewish lobby. There can be no criticism. Can be no legitimate criticism of Israel whatsoever. It's all motivated by hate. We have hate crime laws. You must be punished. And there was not outrage in the U.S. And the ADL had been doing hate crime creep for years and years and years. They started out with the Ku Klux Klan stuff and, the lynchings and cross burnings and things like this. And then they just slowly, it was creeping. And finally, folks asked, and then they went after the Christians, that they had problems with homosexuality and whatever. And they said, we may have problems with it, but you sure as hell don't make any public statements about it. And the ADL got involved in some of this. I remember there were some Christians in one major case in the mid-'80s that were protesting at a gay and lesbian parade. And not violent, but they just were doing a protest. And I think there was 8 of them were arrested. And they were tried under the current hate laws at the time. And convicted. The prosecutor of the case was a Jewish district attorney who also happened to be an ADL director of Philadelphia. A tremendous conflict of interest. So they were all sentenced. I think it was a 5-year prison sentence. But fortunately, when the case got to the appeals, it was overturned with a unanimous position and a stinging rebuke that, that the appeals court judges, they were shocked because he said at the trial, he said there was no evidence ever submitted that a crime had even taken place, much less one that somebody could be convicted for. So it was really a judicial lynching of basically saying, we will, even those of you that are not Christian Zionists, you can come under our gun. because we can prosecute you also. So what happened is they got a big Reverend Ted Pike out in Washington, got on the Christian radio networks and fought this for several years, and single-handedly, because of that case with those 8 Christians being convicted and grossly miscarriage of justice, he was able to hold back AIPAC from expanding those hate crime laws, I think almost single-handedly for 2 sessions of Congress. And then the pastors, the Christian radio were doing a lot of radio stations. That was back in the day of big explosion of radio, and they were getting a lot of pushback, and they had a lot of call-ins. So the independents. But then what happened is AIPAC got to work with the real big guys in the big churches, and then what they did is one year they just stopped doing it. So that's something that we all live with. Our own country, we live in fear. And we're sitting here and watching what happened. What Gordon was talking with these 47 senators, an open conspiracy, a head of state that came here as a private citizen because he did not come through channels with an invitation from the State Department, which means he did not have diplomatic immunity while he's here, because a head of state, foreign head of state, does not have diplomatic immunity because he's a head of state, but because he's here as an official guest of the government. And that's where you get there's nothing that he can be arrested for. But Bibi Netanyahu and these Republican guys, they worked out this letter. This letter was drafted, while he was here and was approved. And he said, if we run into this problem, this is our plan B. So that's what Gordon was talking about. I didn't hear, did he mention this? That they had planned this even before Bibi got as a backup, that they were going to do this and challenge the presidency that, we're betting that we're going to have a veto-proof Senate at some point. We don't now, so we're just going to claim it now. And then we've got Mr. Scalia. We're still looking into the reports we had that they were even checking with him to make sure they wouldn't have any problems with the Supreme Court. Another piece of evidence of a conspiracy. So I had someone from my old John B. Gordon Sons of Confederate Veterans Camp talking to me tonight, and we were chatting about this, about the state of the world and whatever. And I told him I had to go to get ready for the show, and he said, "Well, Jim, what do you really see as our biggest threat now in the world?" And I tell him, I said, "Well, that's easy." I said, the biggest threat that we face is right here in our own country with the corrupt leadership that we have. That's in league with the international crime syndicates. And I said, a lot of these political families have been corrupt their entire lives. It's just that the money has gotten super big, and those getting sucked into it now, it's so big that they feel that you're not even going to be able to survive in a political world unless you go in and get a piece of the action, because otherwise you're just going to get passed by. You'll never have the money to be able to be active politically. You'll just be by like standing still at Indianapolis 500 when the cars go by. And that's sadly what happened, and he kind of tended to agree. I said, there is absolutely no foreign threat of anyone that holds a candle to the threat that we're under every day from the corruption we face here in our government. And part of that corruption is behind what the stand down on Israeli espionage here and the absolutely horrible things that we've allowed Israeli espionage to do here, not the least of which is to subvert and co-opt our Congress and literally undermine some of the biggest institutions in our country to where they're beholding anything they want to vote on or check with or whatever. They to make sure they don't get in trouble. They want to put a call into AIPAC and say, is this okay if I vote this way on this? You guys aren't going to be mad at me. It's absolute humiliation to this country that we have so many leaders that just consider that, well, everybody has to do that. They're not even embarrassed by it anymore.
Jim,
And of
there's
course, we're going to try to change that this year.
there's always been rumors that the organized crime, the Khazarian mafias had a unlimited checkbook because they're hooked up to all this international crime, weapons dealings, drug dealings, all these various scams. But other people have said even more important than that is their ability to human compromise members of Congress and the parties, the drugs, entrapping them in compromising situations, photographing them, tape recording them, and then if they start to step out of line, they have all kinds of very sophisticated covert operations, get the photo under the door at night in a manila envelope and all kinds of things. Which do you think is more important, the actual money that's funneled to these people or the human compromise and the various types of coercion related to it?
They're all important, using the basketball analogy of a full court press, because certain tactics work better with certain people than others. You get some guys that are squeaky clean, so you can't nail them with any pedophilia type stuff. You have to find something else to get on. And of course, who helped them in a lot of this stuff? A lot of this background information came from Israeli spies. That's one of the ways they ingratiated themselves as political power, is they would do the type of spying on opponents that was, extremely illegal, like wiretapping, breaking into sealed records of their when they were children, any law enforcement cases, or you had somebody that had an incident with a young girl when they were 13, 14 years old, and it was settled quietly in juvenile court, and the records were sealed. There are no sealed records that Israeli intelligence cannot get into. If your son was involved in what was claimed to be a rape in college, and it was handled quietly, and there were no charges pressed, and this, that, or whatever, they can, and those records were sealed, they can get into that. And so they have these types of weapons. These are the kinds of things that the Israelis, this is what they offer these folks. If you play ball with us, this is how we can help you. And they don't have to say, if you don't play ball with us, these are also things that you may be on the short end of the stick. So it's really a dual thing. And to see law enforcement not only standing down, but having these guys come, and the ADL goes to the FBI training school and talks about hate crimes and all of this stuff, like we're living back in the 30s and 40s instead of 2000, and no one ever even dreams of you're giving them cover. I mean, you're letting somebody that's representing the entity that's probably that's done more damage to this country with espionage. You're allowing them the prestige of go to the FBI Academy and showing all these young agents that the fix is in. They have the fix in so deep, their hooks here are so deep that we're able to get in here and indoctrinate the young FBI folks. And that we have these sheriff's associations that we take to Israel and take them on the dog and pony show all over, like they do with the Gensa takes the generals and the admirals over. And of course, all of that is all part of grooming those law enforcement people to being assets and sources for them. When they need records on somebody, or they want to look into this or that or whatever, or they've had an incident where some people have been picked up and they wanted to have them quietly released or whatever. That's how you build these relationships, and they are doing this all the time. And they're doing it with money that's been donated to 501c3s, and they do them as educational exchange programs and whatever. It's all taxpayer. They have espionage operations going on here that have been subsidized by the taxpayer. So they are milking this country every which way they possibly can, and they don't have any difficulty whatsoever finding people that not only will help them, but they want to get in for a cut.
Jim, do you see do you see things changing? Are we getting have we reached a turning point where our high military command now and some of our senior intel people have finally figured this out, that, hey, Israel is out of control. It did 9/11 and used nukes against America. It's got Homeland Security set up here based on the Samsonov nuclear blackmail. And if we don't stop them, they are going to bifurcate and destroy America and steal everything we have and probably kill all of our people.
No, I don't. The only bright spot I have seen is we did get some cooperation in terms of some messages quietly being put out that if there was another 9/11 type event in this country, that it would be handled differently than the first one. And no one had to explain what handled differently meant, which I will say now, and that is those who are responsible. There wouldn't be a commission with no testimony that the military would step in and basically eliminate the threat. So there was a little bit of a red line drawn there, and nothing else has happened. But the flip side of that is they have not really gone after them. And of course, what happens is the people with the turnover, all those guys get retired out, they get their board memberships, and most of them just want to lead the good life. The problem with the military now is being corrupted like Congress with what I call the deferred compensation bribe and payoff plan. You don't get the money while you're actively involved. Now with congressmen, of course, they can get the campaign donations. And with Citizens United, they can get huge amounts of PAC money and whatever that can come in. But a lot of it is done, and this is even with high government officials. They pay you for what you did for them while you were in office when you get out of office.
And of course, you have the perks of the little boys and girls and have sex with them, right?
All of that's working for you, but they give you the nice, cushy jobs that they only have so many of, so people have to compete for. And so you have to have a long list of goodies, of things that you've done for us all the years. And then also, how helpful do you want to be now? Now, for generals, they may have some that would like to be military experts on TV. So they have the little thing where they say, well, we'll need to park you into a think tank for a year or two and have you do some papers and maybe write a prestigious book, and you can kind of cool your heels. And then we'll occasionally have you, because we have our hooks in the media, we can see to it that you start getting some airtime as an expert on this, an expert on that. And then eventually a spot may open up where they want a military spokesman, and you could be one of those things. They typically start them out maybe 5 board memberships, maybe 10. This is what they do when they take these junkets to Israel, because they're kind of seeing who's going to put their nose up their butts even more because they're after that money. So they'll take a guy aside and they say, well, you really seem like a guy that kind of really understands, and you seem like a good guy, and you're a guy that maybe could go, but what are your plans after you retire from the Army? Because a guy with a head on straight like you folks, we might be able to help somebody out like that. With some board memberships, $50,000 a year they used to be, so 10 of those was $500,000 right away. An advance on a book, maybe another couple $100,000. They can stick you in D.C. In a think tank position with $150,000 salary. So these guys used to get out, and with 150 retirement, they were looking to get up to like $500,000 a year. And that was easily available for anybody that wanted to play ball. And of course, these board memberships, you don't really have to do anything. And then you can do speaking engagements. So, that was considered a nice, hefty retirement. But that was maybe back in the 90s, early 90s. Now, A 500,000 they just sneer at. You know, 1,000,000 is a year is considered what a retired flag officer should be pulling down if he's a mover and a shaker and knew how to take care of business. And really, the big guys, the real goal is $2 million, $3 million a year.
Is there any end to this? Is there a point where some people are saying that if the U.S. petrodollar ceases to be the world reserve currency, especially if we have new forms of cheaper energy, that this is a moot point, that the Khazarian mafia's money supply will be decapitated from them? Do you have any view on that?
Well, that's part of why we're having the financial wars here. There are no threats. You have the continued bases all over. You have a basing structure now that basically is a Cold War basing structure. There's no country, I mean, even Russia at the time, they had a huge force projection because they had to be able to, at the time with the Cold Wars, to take Europe. So they had to have a massive amount of armor. They had to have the massive amount of tankers, a massive amount of logistics and whatever to not only combat, but take the loss, to be able to have supply chains and tremendous logistics to be able to move in, because that's what the war was going to be about, is taking over Europe. And that basically broke the Soviet Union because it took a massive amount of equipment. And toward the end, one of the reports that came out, I forget what they were, but I mean, the number of tanks and things that they had that were not operational was just staggering. I mean, and we always, to kind of scare people to keep our spending up, we always counted, you know, the number of tanks, which was huge. But you had to really be a student of it to find out that a lot of this stuff was not serviceable. I remember one time when the Syrian army was in Lebanon, and it was in such a decrepit state. Lebanon, and it was in such a decrepit state when they finally had the arrangement where the Syrian army pulled back to Syria, that 50% of their vehicles broke down on the roads back to Syria. That's how decrepit they were. And, you know, and that's a zero threat. An army that has a lot of beat down junk type of equipment. Here, these guys, they couldn't even remove their equipment back to Syria without losing half of it. And this is the same thing with the Russians. So we got hyped for a lot of years on the threat, even the conventional threat for the Soviet Union. They just didn't have it. And now they don't even have 5% of that. There's nobody there that has any force projection because they don't have, even in air transportation, there's no one outside the U.S. that can do air transportation. None of them have the planes to do it, to be able to shift brigades around with their equipment over a couple of days or whatever. They don't have the ships.
So these battles then are all economic then? Would you say money?
Yeah, that's right. So there is no real military threat. It's all over money. And so when the criminals got in, they said, look, you know, we're fighting for financial dominance here. And what in the hell is the sense to spend all this money on the military and not use that to win the financial war? That, you know, if we can't do it by hook, we'll do it by crook. And if they don't want to fight a war, we'll line up a war. We'll frame them. We'll false flag them, and we'll do this, and we'll bring our military in. And if they don't play ball with us, the next guy that will play. So, and we're seeing this now, and this was predicted in the 90s, that this regime change thing, which was remember when it was considered kind of a South American kind of thing? You know, that we always wanted to have the Monroe Doctrine. We wanted to only have leaders in South America that were American puppets, so we would have access to whatever energy and raw materials contracts we had down there. And when we said we'd never want to let the socialists ever get their hooks in there, so we backed up the ruling classes and kept those people down there in a state of oppression. But they said, well, it's our backyard. It's part of the Cold War. We have to make sure our southern flank is safe. So now the Cold War is over, and now what you see is this South American type gringo, ugly American gringo type thing, bandito. We're back to gunboat diplomacy. We will try to get you to do what we want through diplomacy in a nice way and whatever. And if that doesn't work, we go to our plan B. And this is what we have going on now. Plus, we have the problem of the banksters and gangsters over here they've looted Europe and they've pretty much looted the U.S. You have this tremendous concentration of wealth. But what surprised them is they also had quite a concentration of wealth in China and to a lesser degree in Russia, but they had really expected to take Russia over internally. When we sent all the advisors in and to set up their markets, and they scammed them every which way of trying to bring them into a democratic world very, very quickly. You had the rise of all the oligarchs, and they fully intended to put the Khazarian mafia in charge of Russia. And the oligarchs were starting to buy the media. They were going to take over the media and buy it all up, and then use the media to start running for president. That was their whole thing. And so you had guys like Putin and the KGB basically just, we had peace here. And these guys never stopped plotting and trying to take us over and make serfs out of us. So really, if it hadn't been for Putin and those KGB guys that basically just turned the tables around and ran the oligarchs off, that's what would have happened. And Russia wouldn't have been subdued for the American taxpayers' benefits, whatever money that went into that. The crime syndicate that ended up robbing Europe and pillaging those people, and the same crime syndicate that pillaged us with mortgage banking fraud and the derivatives things and whatever, those were the folks who were going to pillage Russia.
Well, Jim, we're out of time now, but if you're willing to go a few more minutes, I would really like to hear more about this because we can't get a straight answer out of anybody. I talked to a top economic expert, someone you know too, and he told me that basically it's only a matter of time. The U.S. petrodollar is doomed, and that the Soviets are faring very well in this economic war. Apparently, they have a very robust system, and the Chinese are working with them to trade independently away from the U.S. petrodollar, along with 177 countries that have either signed on or sent letters of commitment to this system. So, is that true? Is the U.S. petrodollar finished? Is it just a matter of time?
I don't know what they definitely mean by finished. There's a couple different aspects to it. Sure, because of the aggressiveness of sanctions, all of these countries have to do everything they can to protect themselves from economic dominance. And I don't mean just by market stuff, but even access to the banks, access to the SWIFT payment system. We've even stooped that we would even use that. They threatened to possibly lock the Russians out of the SWIFT payment system. I mean, that is really that is hardcore economic warfare. And there was no outrage in the Western media whatsoever.
They started their own though. China and Russia.
Oh yeah. Well, no, they started planning it, and they have one that's internally that they can use internally. But for the one, and then Russia and China, they're starting to do that, but that's something where they still want to stay in the SWIFT system. And I don't think it's ever going to be an all or none. But they'll be in a situation that says we just can't be totally vulnerable to being cut off from SWIFT. And say if they cut us off and we're not able to pay our debts to our Western creditors, well, I guess we just won't pay our debts. We have to wait until they can pressure their countries to put us back on the SWIFT system so we can pay our debts. But as long as they have their future trade is going to be, and they're trying to shift that and maximize that out with people that aren't a threat to them in terms of taking them over economically. And the big turnaround in all this is that when Bush came in, he was basically pulling India away and joining in the coalition of what was going to be the future Asian pivot of hemming him back in. And now with Modi, he is now swinging back into, he sees his long-range future is not with the faraway bankrupt Western country that the U.S. that's being, that's the United Regime regime change country. But he's looking now at possibly they're boring through the Himalayan mountains to bring gas pipelines down because his country can explode if they can get energy down there, particularly pipeline, which reduces the cost. The U.S. Navy can no longer threaten to cut off the energy line. That's the jugular vein of all of these countries. On the Silk Railroad, with the high-speed railroad, same type of thing. If the Navy thinks they want to boycott or blockade China or something like this, well, they can create some issues, but they can't cut them off because they're now shifting to do all this overland. And what is going to happen with all of these massive infrastructure projects that they have to do with these huge pipelines and massive reserves, and they've got more exploration? What does that do to an economy in a world that's flattening? It creates tremendous numbers of jobs. And they're ripple effect jobs because there's parts suppliers, there's all different types. It's pushing, China wants to move its population to get its density down into the Western regions. So that Silk Road, New Silk Road, part of that is to build infrastructure in new cities and have the growth basically been in other areas. And then they can also defend all of this infrastructure with state-of-the-art missile. They don't need a huge Navy. They don't need a way to get 25,000 tanks on ships and land them on the shores of the United States to take over the United States. They don't need to spend the money to do that because they don't want to take over the United States. All they need to do militarily is defend themselves from United States economic and military aggression. And unfortunately, this is what the criminal gangs have stolen from our country, is they've made it now a very dangerous threat, not because the people of the United States really have any antagonism for them or whatever, but we have not done enough to fight back, and we've let these mega crooks take over the country. And yet when these crime families like the Bush family and the mini crooks like the Clintons and whatever, I mean, you have a substantial number of people, they're tripping over themselves to have their picture taken with these people. And that's something you can get distressed about. Why so many Americans would feel so stupid or so callous that they say, well, you know, I'm going to get my piece of the pie, and if you can't get yours, you know, that's the American way. You know, you got to cut the mustard. And
Jim, we know that Homeland Security was set up through nuclear blackmail. Now the intel's starting to come out, and we know that they had a very sinister plan. I'm talking about the top individuals set it up, not the people they brought in. There's a lot of good FBI people who were brought in, a lot of good alphabet people, but the overall top mission, you can look at the quality of the thinking of the leaders when they put in gene stripping X-ray machines that are unlicensed, and all X-ray has to be by law under control of the FDA, and they have to have dose adjustments. There has to be regular dose badges worn. None of that stuff. And you had a complete cancer cluster in, was it Philadelphia, one of the airports, where a third of the people got cancer, and many of them now are doomed to die. A lot of TSA people are doomed to die because of their exposure to these machines, which were just strictly Israeli intelligence operations to get money. They didn't care the effects. But we know that Homeland Security has a very sinister role, and Bibi Netanyahu has gone on the record of their overall agenda to asset strip America. He sees it as a golden calf and take it apart at the seams and then destroy us. Now, is it possible that the tide has turned? I'm hearing rumors now that the Homeland Security is not working out the way they thought, and that there's a complete loss of credibility in Washington. Is that true or not?
I wouldn't say complete loss of credibility, but at least it's good that it's being talked about. But this all gets back to our Congress. All of this stuff has to be done in Congress. And the crooks that have made fortunes out of Homeland Security are not going to give up their golden calf. And their main thing is, we don't care what the people think. We care how the people that we've invested our money into and we've got the goods on is those 500 people in Congress. And anybody who's even thinking of running for president, that we want to let them know that you have to pass the smell test by us. And if you do not come before us and swear fealty to us, and we don't really care about issues, if you want school prayer, we couldn't care less. And, gay marriage, we couldn't care less. You can be the big wheel on all of those issues that you want to, and we don't care whether you win or lose, and you can fight all day long. But on our core issues, you swear fealty to us, or you're not going to get in the game. And if you swear fealty to us and you cross us, well, let me hand you a list of people who did that and what happened to them.
But Jim, how do we break the back of the Khazarian Mafia's hold on this 535 people in Congress? This is insane. They're ruining our country. These people are serving as agents of the Khazarian Mafia's espionage system. What can be done? You're the expert on this stuff.
The first thing we have to do where we're stuck is these issues are never polled. The media never asks questions. Whenever there's any political forums, these questions never come up. And if that one person stands up and asks them and whatever, it's not enough. So they're never considered. There's no publicity that anybody cares about these issues because they're not being asked enough. And the problem we have in the internet world, although we've done massively, and we all deserve a great reward on how much we've been able to cross-educate ourselves. I look back even 5 years ago, I wouldn't even dreamed I would know what I know now and who I'm in touch with now and how I'm networked. I mean, if somebody had told me I would be doing this 5 years ago, I would have just said, you're daydreaming. And then if you'd gone 5 years before that, I wouldn't have believed where I was going to be. I never would have thought I would have made a couple hundred TV shows in Atlanta. I would have said, you're out of your mind, and that I would do that for, very short money. So in terms of educating ourselves, we are vastly more educated about what's going on than a lot of our parents were. Although they had tremendous common sense, they just didn't have the background. But the problem where we have a little bit of a glass ceiling is we kind of accept this keyboard that's in front of me as the only tool that we have available. And where we're coming up short is boots on the ground. We never have commenters making a comment. I was at a town hall meeting with my congressman the other night, and we brought about 15 people in that we were already rigged, and we made sure that when it came question time, we all rushed for the microphones, and we got about 5 hardball questions in on them that no one else had asked before. And when he tried to duck them, we had enough people say, hey, answer the question. You're ducking. Hey, don't do that. Answer the man's question. That's a good question. And the other people that were sitting there, all of a sudden they're looking around, and these are people not dressed like wild men or whatever. They're going like, oh gosh, I've never heard anything about that. So the people began to see that confronting your congressman in public in a town hall meeting, not with one person, but you go with enough of a group. So if somebody gets to ask a question and the other people can go, yeah, that's a good question. Nobody ever answers that question. You guys always try to duck that. How do you feel about Israel? How come there's never any prosecutions? And all this stuff about Iran and nuclear, and we never, ever, you people never discuss anything about Israel's weapons of mass destruction. We have to break the glass ceiling on that. That we've just allowed them to completely shut these issues out, and they never have to address them. And I know one time where this was happening, both senators went to Northeast Georgia because the Tea Party guys were big up there. So they wanted to get that Tea Party vote. So they said, well, we're going to put both senators there to answer their question. And they were going to do it was like an afternoon, I think a 2-hour question and answer session. And I didn't go, but I heard that these guys did exactly what I was doing. Rather than be fanny kissy and whatever, they were shooting tough question after tough question after tough question at them. And then after a while, they started ducking the answers. And guess what happened? Those Tea Party people, they got hostile. I mean, hostile to the point, what the hell did you come here for if you weren't going to give us straight answers? And the staff people saw that it was getting so out of control, guess what they did? They canceled the rest of the meeting. All of a sudden, there was an emergency call from Washington, and we've been called back for a special vote. They make up, that's what staff people are trained to do. When you're in a meeting and you've lost complete control of it, and people are holding up those video cameras, and they're seeing you duck questions, and angry people getting up that are supposed to be your supporters, and they're chewing you out, they know that's terrible media. You never let your boss get in a situation where people are loading that cell phone footage on YouTube before we can even drive home. They run out of the room. And they said, now, they can say whatever they want about you running away, but that will not be as bad as all those cell phone cameras showing you just getting savaged by your own constituents, not opposition, but your own people who say, you're ducking the question. You did not answer the question, and this is what we don't like about you. You're lying by withholding the information. And this is, you have to get in their faces, and you have to do it in public. And you have to put a group of people together so that when you go and you line these things up, you take several carloads of people, and you don't have everybody playing a one-horse pony. Well, I'm going to ask whatever questions I want to. And you go, no, you all agree that there's about 5 the most important questions. And whoever gets up there based on their number, number 1 asks this one, and because that's your whole thing, is to get our issues out in front of the other voters. Because, media isn't going to boost our issues. The pollsters, when's the last time the pollsters ever called you and asked a question about an issue that was key to you? I never have.
No, never. You're right.
Never. And that's how they keep you off the fence. They never poll your questions. So what that tells everybody is what you're interested in is not important, because the polls are rigged. The polls have to be bought, paid for. And the people who pay for those are the people who have their issues. They want their issues in the news. So they run polls on their issues, and they make sure as hell that your issue isn't on there. And yet, what do people start really doing when they get close to the end of a race? They start looking at the polls, because they say, well, I've been busy. I haven't had time. I'll go check the polls to see what issues people are thinking about. And of course, your concept there is out of 20, 25 issues, these are the 5 issues that people are interested in. No, they only asked you about 5 issues. The other 20 were never even mentioned. And people forget that that's where the first grand larceny of democracy really happens. Is the pollsters limit, you cannot get your issue ever on a polling question unless you put the money up and run the poll yourself. And you put $10,000 together and whatever, and then do a poll. And the poll is on your questions, because that's how people who do polls, that's why they're doing them. And they ask the questions a certain way, and they go out and they test what kind of wording is needed to get this kind of response and whatever. So we have to get into that boots on the ground thing. We have to get out of this education thing that we talk to ourselves. We've gotten a lot smarter, but we have to deploy it. And this is why my big theme for myself is, with a radio audience, I'm going to try to see if we can pull together these phone brigades, because I think that is the lowest cost, the least amount of time, and most suited for internet warriors is to take the next step and have a weapon of a telephone campaign, weapon of mass destruction, where we can get on the radio a few times a week. We can put it up on the website and say, this is the phone call campaign for today. We need the chairman of this committee. This vote is coming up, and we want their phones flooded. That we will be very unhappy if they bend over for the Israeli lobby again. This is another thing that we found out, that the Israeli lobby, AIPAC, wrote every word of the legislation. And it's just been, they just hand this to them and they said, here, this is what we want you to pass. This is what we want you to vote on. We want to hunt down situations like that. And when that happens, we want to show a committee of 15 people that we can shut their phones down for a week if they do something like that to us. And word will get.
That's a good idea, but Jim, there have been recently all these rumors that the U.S. petrodollar is failing. It's been the world reserve currency only because of the deal that Kissinger and Nixon worked out in 1971 to provide protection for the oil producers in exchange for trading only in U.S. dollars. But if that fails, some of these experts are saying that the default mode for the Americans and for the countries involved that are on the pipeline of this Middle East oil, including all these British bankers, is the default mode is war. It is major war. Is that a fact? And is that
it is in terms of avoiding it, because then they can get into these emergency financial scams. That they can create. They can create huge amounts of debt anyway. But there's another thing about this that they're missing in terms of the currency, and this is hard to discuss with people. But Gordon gave me a good lesson on this, and he said, did you? I said, well, you didn't have any euros. He said, when you were in Lebanon or Syria and whatever. The euro is a pretty substantial currency, wouldn't you say? It's not a third world nation type situation. It's not a Mexican peso or whatever.
Yeah.
He said, how many cab drivers in Lebanon will take a euro? And I said, I don't know, probably most. He said, none. He said, how many cab drivers in Syria would take a euro? I said, oh, I guess the answer is none. He said, no. He said, there is only one currency you pay. They'll pay in the local currency. But if you're a foreigner, they want the U.S. dollar. Now, you want to ask, you think they can take a ruble? Anybody? The Caribbean? You think they're going to take a ruble? Think anybody? You say you go to Africa, you go to the Caribbean, and you go to a bar and you want to whip out your rubles? Forget it.
But that's
you wanna
because
do
it's
it-
the petrodollar. If the petrodollar dies as the world's reserve currency,
No, but if it dies compared to who and to what, because they're all relative. You're thinking about it in an absolute basis. That there's other strong currencies out there that the U.S. has a 1% or a 2% edge on in terms of popularity, but that is not the situation. Most of these other currencies, nobody will take them. I mean, they'll take them in international trade and whatever. So there's a part of this that's being missed. And then the second part of that is none of these other countries can create fiat currencies like the U.S. can. And people were very angry about the $16 trillion that was pumped into the European liquidity situation during the banking operation. And of course, we know now that the only hard part, the only real money of that $16 trillion was the $4 trillion stolen from Lee Wanta with the money that he got wired in from China. The rest of the $12 trillion was just a ledger entry. It was monopoly money.
okay, but is there a day coming? You know, and Gordon's mentioned this too, but there is a derivative Ponzi scheme, a house of cards. Is there a day when that will collapse under its own weight and destroy the intrinsic value of the dollar?
That is a very good point, because nobody knows how that could get out of kilter. And then because, they say oh no, that could never happen, and we know it can. But what you hear even less about, what if somebody decides to destroy that on purpose? Just like, again, an espionage operation, like a hacker. What if somebody already knows they can hack that and bring that down, crashing anytime they want to, that they've already figured out how to do it?
Could they blackmail?
Either blackmail, or they could say we could just crash everything and then buy everything up and whatever. Are there people so evil and so wicked and powerful that have already sitting on so much money, they've done everything, and they're saying, what else could we possibly do? I'm 70 years old now. What's one big score that could put me to go down as the guy that really beat them all? And the answer is yes, there probably are people out there thinking about how to do that. And, somebody of like Bibi Netanyahu's type caliber, and some of these people that Stu's had to deal with and been tormented with the Denver crowd and whatever. These people will do anything for money. And as Jefferson said, when he got sick of them during the early years, his famous line was, merchants have no country. Their loyalty is to making a profit in a dollar, and they don't care how they do it. And this was in terms of the French Indian War, when French ships, although we were at war with with France, they were reprovisioning at the ports in Philadelphia. And these people just thought it was, making war profits and they had currencies. They had, rather than local paper money, they had gold and silver coins and whatever. And the merchants were just all flocking down there to sell them anything that they wanted. And we have that going on today, that, we have not only the Israelis and the Likuds want to milk America like the golden goose. We have plenty of Americans over here that do it. We have prestigious political families like the Bush family that shouldn't be able to show their face anywhere without being booed. There's enough material publicly available on them, and to have any of them think, or that their children, because they come from a famous political family, they should be booed. Say, go away. We just cannot take, we don't want any more of your people again. And yet the parties just say, oh, we got to get somebody that's got a name. People want to be entertained. They won't show up at a meeting unless the person's got a name. And so in a way, they look at us as like schmucks. part of what's true. He says, if we don't put a dog and pony show on for them, they won't even show up. And then they'll blame us because we lost or whatever. So the public has to buy into some of this problem also. And as Gordon, we've been talking, I said we have not put up the resistance that we needed. And now we have a problem post 9/11 is we've had the doors closed on a lot of things that we can't do. We have to worry about an oppressive 9/11. Israeli espionage now is wired in several layers deeper than it was before. And it's just like we were always told, it's going to be harder to do later. You know, if you duck it, it's just going to be harder for your kids to fix this, and or probably impossible for the grandkids, because they'll just be hardwired in everywhere, which is exactly what they're trying to do. And of course, they're cutting so-called good, normal Americans in for a piece of the pie along the way. That's their cover. And these people will just get up and say, it's a wonderful country. Anybody can make it here. If you're willing to work hard enough, it's the land of opportunity. They have endless number of people that will go up to the microphone to start singing that song and keep the time off of talking about what we are. And we're only able to get our message out is because we built the platform.
I have one more question for you, and then we should probably stop. But
yep.
I've been working with Mike Harris. We've been studying the Khazarian mafia, really, which is the problem. This is where the Lykudas come from. This is where the Rothschild bankers come from. It goes back to that. And apparently these people, whatever they are, they hold these intergenerational grudges. And they took it out on Russia with the Bolsheviks because the Russians did so many things. The Russians broke up Khazaria because they wouldn't stop their road warrior games and murders and impersonations, and they helped the Americans with the Revolutionary War and with the Civil War, and they just seem to never quit. Well, now thanks to the work of Lee Want and some of the brilliant things that were done by him, and Ronald Reagan wasn't perfect. He did a lot of things wrong, but one of the things he did right was making Lee Want his secret agent and authorizing him to resolve these issues. And Lee believes, and I believe, that he prevented World War III, that it would have gone nuclear at that time, and it would have been either mutually assured destruction or Americans would have lost. But it seems as if, for whatever reasons, the new administration in Russia, Putin, have driven these Khazarians out, and the word is that they're furious about it, and that they've hijacked the American political system, and they're using it to try to go back and get at Russia to, cut off all these deals, and they're doing everything they can to cut Russia off at the knees economically. Now, can you explain to us why they've got this desire to destroy Russia from all sides? Why can't they just live and let live? Why are they after Russia, and how are they doing it? And will they succeed or fail?
Well, I think it may sound like a simplistic answer to many, but when you already have your hooks in and the game rigged and under control in 3/4 of your territory, it's not a mystery why you focus on the 1/4 that's left, because that's the last area left to take over. The big battle for the Western United States, which really was the cause of the Civil War, because the Northern industrialists and whatever, they had absolutely no intentions of sharing the riches in the Western United States, which was considered at the time the holy grail of wealth. And that the people that were going to be at the top of the pile and exploiting that wealth were going to be some of the wealthiest and the most powerful people in the world. And it turned out that was the case. And they said, we're not sharing that with a bunch of plantation owners in the South. We want it all. And that's what you have this focus. All I can see is with this pivot of they had to keep the war industries going. And the only way to do that is they had to crank up. And it almost seemed like contrite to say, a new Cold War. And yet you're looking and say, and you see these West Point type, high military trained type people getting up here, and you know that they're lying. They know these people are no military threat to us whatsoever. But they're lying to us and tell us that they are. And the only justification for it to be is because they're really serving the military industrial complex. That's who they've pledged allegiance to. They have not pledged allegiance to the country. That part of it is just a game. And they look at it and say, look, the politicians lie. The people want them to say certain things to get elected. And we, the generals and top military people, we kind of have to do the same thing. We have to tell people what they want to hear to shell out the money.
But can they succeed in taking down the Soviet Union? They're going after them on multi fronts, and they're doing all kinds of dirty political and economic manipulations. Can they succeed, Jim?
No, and here's the reason. The Soviets, they have a little, I mean, the Russians have a little bit of a poison pill. If they really, really put the screws on them, they can default on their loans, which will cause a bank collapse in Europe. Okay? Because I don't know, it's 300 billion or something like that. I mean, they've got quite a bit of a tab in 2015. I think they have 120 billion they have to roll over. And of course, they are not going to, with their currency down 50%, they aren't going to spend $240 billion worth of rubles at a depressed rate to pay off debt. That's really $120 billion. That's going to give, that's kind of what the game is here, to string them out to do that, so they can default and then say, well, that's going to hurt your credit rating. I said, yeah, it will hurt our credit rating, but it's going to collapse the European banking system. The German banks can't take the hit. The French banks can't take the hit because they're all strung out. So really, everybody's kind of holding a gun on each other in terms of that aspect of it. But so that's just in terms of the debt. But what also is happening is what they really underestimated, and this was the stupidity and the incompetency of it. They thought that the suspicion and the competition between Russia and China and India being angry with China and vice versa and whatever, that the chances of this Asian pivot and this new Cold War thing, that they would never be able to work together. And what we've seen now is they have been absolutely dead wrong with that. So all of these high-paid, multi-degreed strategists, all of these think tanks, they're all sitting with egg on their face. So all they're trying to do now is come up with some new type of thing. They want everybody to say, now, how can we morph this into a deal? Well, everybody will forget that we were the geniuses that strategized this thing. Because what we're doing now is they're going to come out of this stronger than they were when we started. And we in the West, we are going to be weaker. And of course, the opportunity for us as citizens is to hopefully, if we're not complete dodo heads, is to completely clean house with our political structures who took us down this stupid road that was not in our best interest. It was just in the interest of the hoodlums that they were really working for. But if we're too lazy to do it, it won't happen. So everyone's going to have to kind of pick and choose. I would have thought after the pummeling that we took in the first decade with the mortgage thing and derivatives, that people really would be, I mean, I would thought they would be burning stuff down. I mean, there would be rocks. I would think that congressmen driving around in armored cars from the bricks and stuff, when they would show up, they would just never know when angry constituents would be throwing stuff and cinder blocks off the buildings out and stuff like that. I have been surprised on how tame the public's been. If you had told me that we would be able to publish like what we have, the evidence that we published on 9/11, and from the general public and even the mass media, that no one would cover it other than the people, our standard audience, I would have been really surprised. I said, no, if you put really good information out there and that's solid, it's come from insiders and whatever, they'll respond to that. And again, our audience has, but we have not been able to penetrate that. So that is not disheartening. But we do have momentum. BB has blood in the water. And folks, if you have senators that are on that 47 list and whatever, please call them every couple of days. You can alternate between the Washington office. Call yourself one time, then have your wife called if you have grown kids, because they'll log you in if you call them too many times over and over. They have software now where they can send you a letter about harassment. So you have to be careful about that. But you have to go ahead and let these people know. I mean, there's only 47 of them, you know, and there's millions of us out there. And they have phone numbers, and they have offices. And we should be able to shut those offices down to show our displeasure. And sure, when you call them, the line will be busy. So at one point, they'll just take the line off the hook. So what you do is, you know, you just try a couple times a day for like days. And, you know, you don't sit there and try to get through and try to get through and try to get through, because with a real strong phoning campaign, you can't get through because there's hundreds of people trying to call at the same time. So don't feel defeated. Just say, it's working. I can't get a call in.
Jim, this is Chip. You have a question in the chat room wanting to know how they can find a copy of that letter, where it is on Veterans Today.
Let's see. You really, the best way to do it is to Google Veterans Today, 47 Senators letter, whatever, and you probably find it with a Google search quicker than anything. In fact, our archives are so big with our 25,000 plus articles, I found it's easier to Google. If I want to find something. I sometimes can pull my own articles up quicker with a Google search than I can go, because I can only go into my archives one page at a time. Once we get inside our own archives, we don't have a keyword search. It's just page after page after page. But that, folks, is always the main thing. Just you get used to the keywords. And what we'll try to do is find that direct link and put it up on the website. This is very good about getting questions in like this, because we will try to make it easy for you so folks don't have to go through the hunting. We'll see if we put that link up on the
Jim,
website.
I have to go now, but I want to thank you for everything you're doing, and I really appreciate your briefings. Just cannot get this information anywhere else.
Well, we do that. I'd also like to say it's a little Chanks. I don't get to talk to Chip very much, but he's been laboring in the shadows here. And folks, this is what we call, you need infrastructure, guys. I hate to use the Clinton term, but it takes a village. But we have to do what we do here requires a very good skill mix. And you have to have a variety of people, and you have to have people that know how to do stuff, or just stuff doesn't get done. The only way we've been able to do this is we not only have people with the skills, but they got the fight in their belly to want to do it. Because everybody has a lot of their own. We have a lot of walking wounded here at VT, people that have been through all kinds of issues and family and money and lawsuits and past careers and whatever, and would have a lot of excuses to say, well, I don't have time to do this. I've got my own problems. But what the miracle of VT is a lot of people that are in that boat, and I refer to them as walking wounded. They have somehow banded together here, and we've built this operation, this thing that really no one else is doing. We don't see anyone doing what we're doing. And we thank the audience for that also, because if they had not responded, we would just be talking to ourselves. So I'll look forward to seeing you guys next Monday night.
That sounds great, and I want to thank you, Jim Dean, and managing editor of Veterans Day, and Dr. Preston James, author on Veterans Day. And Doc, you've got a killer article up people need to look at. You've always got killer articles, Jim, and Chip Tatum. I know he's going to be unloading soon, but he's been working hard behind the scenes, as you said. So I thank you both, gentlemen. I thank you, Gene, for all you've done. And folks, we're going to end the broadcast. Before we do, I'm going to ask that this is a listener-supported new network, and we do have costs for setting this up. And if everybody were to chip in $1 or $5 this month, we would be able to cover all the expenses that went out. It's a very small amount each month to contribute. We're not charging for the archives, and our archives for past shows are being loaded. They are being taken out, all these bogus little commercials of black belts in karate and spiritual warfare and all that craziness from another network we were on that had a bunch of crazy. So I'm leaving it at that because we're just reporting the true news here. We're not into the bogus, fictitious stuff. So with that said, I'm going to thank all three of you again for a great show, and we're going to sign off tonight with the Veterans Today Radio News Reports, and I am your host, Stu Webb, and it is March the 12th, 2012. And thank you, Jim Dean.
Stay tuned for the best in news from
Doc.
Veterans Today.
Thank you, Gene Tatum.